Hey guys, welcome back to Legit Street Cars. Today I have a very special video for you all, something that I've wanted to film for a very long time, and I might even make this a series, and that would be mechanical car reviews. So as you guys know, there are a ton of normal car reviews where they go over all of the features, take it out for a test drive, and those are great, but being a mechanic, I can appreciate the mechanical aspects of all cars from all eras, and I can appreciate new technology and really old technology. So today we have a 1977 Ferrari 308 GTB. It had a little bit of an engine mishap. So the engine is out, it's fully disassembled. And in this video, I want to geek out with you guys on all of the old school technology in this Ferrari engine. There's so much to show. And then obviously we'll show some carnage as well. Now, if you guys are wondering about my V12 project, do not worry, it is still moving along, but right now the cylinder heads are out, they're getting ported. So if this was just a normal repair, I would have had it all done by now. But the V12 cylinder heads, I don't believe have ever been ported. So the company is basically making their CNC program off of my head. So it's gonna take a couple of weeks for those to come back in. So in the meantime, I'm looking at some other cars to buy. We have some awesome content coming up on the BMW, the Caprice, bunch of other stuff going on. But anyway, for now, let's get to this Ferrari. So much cool stuff. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. And if you do, let me know in the comments section and make sure to subscribe if you're new. All right, so to kick things off, we are at Fluid Motor Union in Naperville, Illinois. You guys have seen me over here a bunch of times hanging out with OJ and the guys working on projects and stuff. Very, very cool shop. If you guys need anything and you live in Illinois, this is the place to be. But they have a 1977 308 GTB. So they also make a 308 GTS, which is a Targa top version. And this is a US market car, which has a few little different things on it, as well as a wet sump oiling system. Some of the other markets got a dry sump oiling system. So as you can see here, the label is in English and it conforms to the US EPA regulations, which unfortunately at the time meant that this car had 230 horsepower and I think like 177 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 60 in like 6.9 seconds. So not the most impressive car on paper, but again, it was 1977. Performance was kind of in a recession, if you will, but this is a beautiful car nonetheless. It's absolutely perfect inside and out, but the engine had a little bit of an issue, and I'll show you that in a minute, but take a look at the interior. Just gorgeous, guys. Just absolutely gorgeous. Manual transmission, of course. Look at the attention to detail. So beautiful, so beautiful. Anyway, there's probably a review somewhere on the interior. Let's check out this 3-liter V8 engine. So what the 308 means is a 3-liter 8-cylinder. So as you can tell here, cylinders are not the largest, very, very small displacement V8. But they do sound pretty cool. This one is carbureted. It has 4 Weber carbs, I'll show you guys. And this is a dual overhead cam engine, and it has 2 separate timing belts. So unfortunately, one of the timing belts snapped and caused a valve to kiss the piston. It bent the valve. So this car did run when it came into fluid, just not very well, as you could imagine, with one timing belt snapped. So it basically had a dead bank. Now you guys are probably wondering what is going on right here. This is pretty crazy to see an engine with a differential strapped to the side of it. And because this engine sits all the way in the back, the crank is actually on the passenger side, but the transmission is right here. So this is actually the input shaft for the transmission. So the way this works is we have a bell housing that would bolt onto the back of the engine, and then this is a little transfer case. So these gears will transfer power from the crank all the way down to the input shaft. It'll spin the input shaft, which then spins the differential. So this is actually pretty compact, very creative. I love the fact that this is the little transfer case on the back of this Ferrari engine. And if we go over here, we can see where the shifter linkage would connect, and it actually goes right through the oil pan. So your shifter linkage goes through the oil pan, and there is the linkage right there. It's actually a very beefy rod that goes all the way up to the shifter. So under the hood here, we have 4 mounts where the engine sits, and we have the AC compressor still there. I believe that's still connected to keep the charge. And this Ferrari has dual fuel tanks. They're kind of smaller, so you have one right there, one right there. You have your sending unit on the very top. The fuel filter is right down there. And then if you see these pipes, these are coolant pipes that run all the way to the front because, as you could imagine, we have a radiator all the way up here. So these coolant pipes are gonna go all the way underneath the vehicle and connect to the engine back there. And this is really neat, guys. This is the washer fluid tank. Look at this. It is a bag. It's got a little baby motor right there. Very, very neat. And a spare tire sits here as well. And it looks like we have a brake booster right there and the master cylinder for the brakes, I believe. So yeah, this is the master cylinder for the brakes, and I believe the clutch system on this is mechanical, so we don't have a separate master cylinder and reservoir for that. And here's our wee little battery in the front, so not too many electronics going on in this Ferrari, so it doesn't require a battery, about double the size like we see in most modern cars today. Something else I found really cool on this engine, very interesting, is that even though it only has 230 horsepower, they have factory head studs. This isn't boosted. Like normally you use head studs on a very high horsepower engine, especially if it's boosted. So they are running a graphite head gasket with head studs on a 230 horsepower engine. Very cool, very weird. Okay, so the madness moves on from the head studs and the graphite head gaskets to the timing marks on the flywheel here. So there are marks all around the flywheel, and normally when you'd have the bell housing attached, there would be a cover, an inspection cover that you could take out to time the engine when you're doing your timing belt job under normal circumstances. Now this job still does require you to drop the engine to do the timing belts, and they are due every 15,000 miles or 3 years. So a very short interval, but then again, cars like this aren't really driven all that often. So what's really cool is the way you can check the timing without disassembling the entire engine. So they have these little lines here on the camshaft, and those are gonna line up with these lines right here on the top caps for the cam. So you can take the oil cap off and kind of peek in there. And then on this side, I believe you take out the spark plug wires and you can kind of like peek around in there. I'm not exactly sure on the other head, but one thing that they noticed when this vehicle came in, because they didn't know right away that the timing belt had snapped, it was just running really bad, and these had an issue with water getting in here. As you can see, it's very corroded. So at first there was a possibility that maybe it was an ignition issue, but then after, you know, digging deeper into this project, they found the snapped belt. All right, so here's a little bit of carnage for you guys. This is the bent valve that they found. So when this timing belt snapped, this is interference. It bent this valve right here. So luckily, it doesn't seem like there was any real damage to the cylinder head. So as you can see here, this is where the bent valve was, and the seat looks to be in good condition. They're definitely still gonna send the heads out to get checked, but it's very possible that you can get away with just replacing this one valve, obviously new belts, and call it a day. So something else that I found to be really cool is these have solid lifters or buckets, and they don't really wear out, but you can shim them, which is essentially like replacing them. So as long as there isn't any wear on the sides, you can shim the top of these. So you do need to adjust these periodically, especially after everything's disassembled, but you can actually snap out this top little insert and replace just the top parts of the lifter. So this goes to show that back in the day, not everything was just replace it immediately. You could actually fix internal engine parts. So I find that to be very cool. And a little bit more overkill for the low amount of horsepower, dual valve springs. Pretty crazy. So we have cars, you know, with 500-600 horsepower with single valve springs, but back then with half the power or a third of the power, they had dual valve springs. Now I assume this thing still probably revs out pretty high, and I'm sure Ferrari knew what they were doing, but it's very interesting to see a dual valve spring on such a low horsepower engine. So not only do you have to perform a valve adjustment and possible shimming about every 15,000 miles when you're doing your timing belt, but you have 4 little Weber carburetors that may need adjustment as well. So this engine was running pretty poorly when it came in, so they're not exactly sure the condition of the carburetors. They could be totally fine, but that is just another piece of the puzzle of owning an older Ferrari, is that you have 4 carburetors that need to work together to make this engine run smoothly. And check out one of the 2 little baby intake manifolds. So this is where 2 of the carburetors would sit, and this is a balance tube right here for the vacuum ports. So there's tiny little holes. You can see one right there, one right there. So that way we know that this is getting the same amount of vacuum, and it kind of bleeds it off between all of them. So remember I showed you guys the little transfer case that would bring our power to the input shaft. This is the other parts of the transmission, and that is the gear that kind of kicks this party off right there. And here is the clutch. So the clutch seems to be in pretty good condition. It's not soaked in oil or anything. And yeah, this is mechanical, so there is no slave cylinder and master cylinder for the clutch system. Everything is very mechanical on this old Ferrari. Here is the snapped timing belt right there. As you can see, let's take a look at the inside. Yeah, not horrible. I've seen way worse. I've seen intact timing belts that are all cracked up, ready to snap. And what does it say here? Made in Italy, non piegare. So that means don't fold. So no idea how old this is. Probably very old, I'm gonna guess. It is a little hard, kind of a little brittle. The new one's gonna be much softer. But yeah, this is a shame. So the quirks and features or characteristics and oddities, sounds kind of good. Let me know in the comments section what I should call this stuff. But they don't end with the actual engine. They continue with the parts catalog. So Ferrari decided to translate this a little bit for you. They kind of gave up eventually, but you can see here, spare parts catalog. Cool. Cool, they're translating it, right? The table here, they will give you some English words so you sort of know where to go. And then I think they fired the translator. So we are back to Italian for basically the entire thing. Like they'll tell you spare assembly units, cool, so you kind of know where you're at, but then all the names of the actual parts and whatnot are all in Italian. So past the very beginning of this, you just have to learn the language. You got to step up your Ferrari game. This is cool, they give you part numbers and everything, but you don't know what you're working on. Anello di tenuta. So I speak Italian, but I learned it as a child, so I don't speak like car Italian. So I don't really know what all this stuff means. Rondella, supporto di sulla scatio. My mom's gonna kill me. Yeah, so I can read as well, but just technical stuff, I just never learned it. So anyway, I could go through this parts catalog forever, and I probably will after I'm done filming. Lots of cool pictures. Lots of cool stuff going on here. I want to show this to my mom so she can kind of like teach me the way of the car Italian language. But just another interesting tidbit in the world of old carbureted Ferrari engines. All right, so this wouldn't be a complete LegitStreetCars video without a breakdown of the financials. So I'm sure you guys are curious what something like this would cost and exactly how OJ and the guys are gonna go about this repair. You're looking at about 60 hours, if not a little bit more, just for labor. And then as you can imagine, parts are very expensive. So we have OJ.
So I'm pretty sure you probably understand Ferrari maintenance is pretty expensive, but 308s were getting pretty affordable for a little while there, and the kicker was always the maintenance schedule. Usually you're talking for a timing belt service, I would say north of $6,000. It is an engine out service. The problem though is that you never know what you're gonna find, right? Until you have everything apart, you're not sure where that's going to lead and where that's going to lead and where that's going to lead. Like for instance, we see one of these head studs is rounded out or cracked. You know, we're not just gonna simply leave it alone, you know, but we're not gonna quote it out before we get there. So that's the, I don't wanna say the danger, but that's the issue you face when you're dealing with a customer. You don't want to quote everything at it, because then they'll think that they're just throwing the book at it. But you want to leave some wiggle room in there so they don't think that when you're calling and saying, hey, you know, we did find a head stud, that you're just adding stuff on. So it's a delicate process. It takes a lot of care. But the nice thing about Ferrari is that any money you're putting into it, it's going to hold the value. So that is key, as opposed to some cars where they're depreciating on top of that. As you can see, this is a pretty big job. 60 plus hours. It's pretty intense. You got to keep everything. The biggest hurdle though is that you're not getting parts next day. When you have something wrong, it could take a week. Some of the Ferrari parts we've had, especially with the coronavirus, the shutdown, it's been 3 months we've waited for some parts. So that's the biggest difficulty, is you get into this job, you find it, all of a sudden it becomes not just money intense, but also time intense. But something like this, if you were to take it to the dealer and some of the ways that they have to approach things, you're probably talking $30,000 to get in this far. You know, if you're checking the heads, if you have to do machining there, all the services, everything we're going to replace, and we're probably going to be about 40% less than that. So while the car might be affordable, you might see one of these, if you get into a situation where you've got to do a major service and then there's other work above and beyond that, it could get expensive quick.
Here's a little V12 engine sneak peek for you. OJ and the guys here at Fluid have been vapor blasting my engine parts. Look at this intake. So cool. And there you have it, a somewhat broken yet still cool and interesting 1977 Ferrari 308 GTB engine that's all taken apart. And if you guys have any suggestions for future videos like this, definitely comment down below. I'd love to show you guys some more cool carnage, but also if a car is disassembled, we get to kind of peek inside, take a look at the technology, kind of geek out together. I love this stuff. I hope you guys do too. And if you did, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Make sure to comment down below, share the video, subscribe if you're new, and most importantly, have an awesome day. I'll catch all of you in the next video.